Guys, gals and non-binary pals, a nice tall glass of Capraina here with rhyme signatures, the nerdiest music review this side of being the most delicious possible use of sugarcane and lime that the human race has yet to come up with. And today we're going to be doing a review of the new Papangu album, Lampi Ray. Okay, there's this bit in The Lion King where young Simba addresses his soon-to-be fratricidal uncle and says, "Hey Uncle Scar, you're so weird." To which, of course, Jeremy Irons leans in close and retorts, "You have no idea." And while I've certainly considered using this section of classic Western animated history to refer to an album I've reviewed before, it's never felt as pertinent as it does to this sophomore album from Brazilian band Papangu. Lucky for me, I like weird. To list some of my own quirks, I never fully finish a drink. I usually leave a centimetre or so of whatever I'm drinking in the bottom of the glass, and this applies to everything from a simple glass of water to a 20-pound cocktail. I have a weird crane-like battle stance when I'm cooking. I often don't even realise I'm doing it, but I've been doing it now for about 20 years, and I think only arthritis is likely to stop me at this point. I have to internally say the word banana when I lock my front door, otherwise I'll be constantly worried that I've not actually locked it and villains will break into my house and steal my expensive collection of Donald Duck memorabilia. But in spite of these minor eccentricities, nothing prepared me for the absolute what the bull buggery of strangeness that I was about to face when listening to this record. So, who exactly are Papangu? This six-piece hail from Brazil, and I would like to extend my sincere apologies to the entire nation for my horrific attempts to speak Portuguese throughout this review. My experience with the language comes from a one-week holiday around Lisbon when I was about 9 years old, give or take, so I'm not even versed in Brazilian Portuguese. Lampi Ray, or King Lamp in English, is their second album, and my first exposure to their works, which came from a recommendation from none other than the king of music advice, Nathan on Shuffle. Anyone not following Nathan absolutely needs to go check him out right now. If there's anyone out there who's mostly responsible for the more off-the-beaten-track recommendations I get, then it's usually him. To try and pigeonhole this music into any one particular genre or category is an exercise in madness. Papangu are an entity unto themselves, but the closest I could ever get to describing them is... imagine an avant-garde Zool band who flirt with black metal and employ gentle giant eccentricities into one fascinating, challenging, but ultimately very rewarding package. Okay, first off, let's talk about the fact that this is a concept album. Always a good start for me, even if it is in a language I can't understand. So, from their own Bandcamp page, the album's narrative is described as such. Lampi Ray presents an epic biographical narrative of magical realism, recounting the trials and tribulations of legendary bandit leader Virgulino Ferreira da Silva, aka Lampião, from his birth until his rise as the most feared man in Brazil. The rest of the story, Lampião's downfall, and the infamous beheading of his whole crew in 1938 will be continued in a future recording. So, suitably grandiose stuff then, which is well reflected in the musical approaches and attitudes on display here. From the earliest splash screen, these 6 talented individuals are bringing the whole-ass kitchen sink to this affair, and yes, the band does list the use of a rubber chicken as one of the principal instruments employed by band member Pedro Francisco. A curious novelty? Almost certainly, but be honest, it's made you interested, hasn't it? And interesting is exactly what this album is. Every single one of the 9 tracks on offer here, even the interstitial and intro tracks, are bringing the weird and the wonderful. The album clocks in at just over 45 minutes long, and frankly that's about the perfect length. Any longer and it would feel exhausting, and any shorter and it would feel like the band's ideas simply haven't had time to flourish. But what does this record, what does it sound like? Now, it's hard to really pinpoint it between the gravelly, growled vocals on the second and third tracks playing fiddle to the droning, chant-like chorus work in the background, to the off-centre and uncomfortable feeling melodies. The whole record has an almost nightmarish quality to it, feeling like a kind of deranged fever dream. As a result, I'm a big fan. It's taking risks and feels like a genuinely progressive record, sounding in parts nothing like what we've seen from anyone else in the 21st century. But it also feels evocative of classic bands like Magma, King Crimson, Gentle Giant, who in turn were trendsetters in the avenue of the strange. I appreciate how the band follow their own rulebook though. Whilst the music is discordant and unsettling at times, they've made their own guidelines and they stick to them. Jazzy avant-garde instrumentation is the order of the day, and it results in an album that never sounds the same twice. I've become fascinated by this one since initially checking it out with a kind of trepidatious interest. The earlier parts of the record are definitely the more, how shall I say, intense, with some aggressive vocals and overwhelming arrangements that could easily scare off the unprepared listener. Now, as we move into the back half of the album, the sixth track has a kind of 1960s cocktail lounge vibe to it, feeling like it would not be out of place in a Cannes Film Festival period drama set in a sleepy Mediterranean fishing village. It's honestly a fantastic way to chill the listener out after several intense pieces and sets up the overall mood for the remaining 3 tracks of the album. Now, I am certain that I'd be getting a lot more out of this if I could actually understand Portuguese, but I feel like the music does a great job of explaining the narrative in spite of my linguistic ignorance. 7th track, Maracuja, is a big favourite of mine, picking up the torch of the aforementioned cocktail lounge vibe and moving it onto the world stage, feeling progressive and adventurous with a fantastic and memorable riff that drives the body of the song. Honestly, it's a tough album to wrap your head around, but the little moments of musical innovation that underlie the crux of the experience make for a record that's so fascinating in what it does deliver that it's almost impossible to look away. Okay, so while this album feels almost tailor-made to someone with eccentric tastes such as myself, this album does suffer from being almost too adventurous for its own good. For each person out there who can appreciate the peculiarities and avant-garde expressionism that it's bringing, there are going to be just as many people who are going to have a "what the hell was that" reaction. This, like a lot of avant-garde music, is guilty of sacrificing accessibility and an approachable front in favour of the vision. And while I would never try to impose any kind of creative restrictions or whatever to a band, it's really hard to know how to convince someone to check this music out unless they're either similarly open to progressive and experimental soundscapes like this, or maybe they've taken a copious amount of Mary J. Blige prior to pressing play on the stereo equipment. Coming up with legitimate or argumentative cons for this album is difficult for me, as I honestly love this record. I love how strange it is, how there's no compromise here at all, and the bizarro factor has been dialed up to 11, and to hell with everything else. But I can appreciate not everyone is into 8-minute long scat singing tracks with flutes, keyboards, vibraphones, Wurlitzers and more in the background as I am. The density of the album does hold it back a little bit, as it took me a solid 8 or 9 full listens before I started to realise that this was actually a brilliantly composed and nearly perfectly performed album, rather than just a smattering grab bag of notes and instruments thrown at a canvas, while secretly hoping that it turns out okay. The record is about the most Marmite thing I've listened to this year. Some people will be put off by the growled vocals early on, some people may be put off by the whimsy towards the end. But somewhere, amidst all of the chaos, all the perpetual insanity of it all, lies one of the best albums of 2024. It's just going to take a very particular person to find it amidst all of the everything. So, what else can I possibly say about Papangu's Lampi. I was warned that this one was an oddball, and I went into it expecting to have my eyebrows raised, but I still wasn't quite ready for just how absolutely off the wall the whole experience was. But the more I've listened, the more I've acclimated to it, and in a bizarre kind of way, it almost felt normal to me over the last few listens. No, this isn't an album I expect everyone to enjoy. Its oddness is almost to a fault, feeling at times like it's going out of its way to be as uncomfortably angular in its instrumentation and overall presentation as is humanly possible. But in spite of all the unusual pivots in its design and approach to musicality, it works. The experiment comes off flawlessly to create an album that feels unique, that feels like something I want to show off to people and encourage them to try it and make up their own minds. Recommendation here, guys, is to get a digital copy of this one. I'm probably going to buy a physical one of this simply because I feel that weirdness like this needs to be preserved, and just as I too identify as a curious little gremlin creature, I would like to keep music that matches my freak close to my heart. This is all, of course, guys, just my opinion, so if you loved or hated this one, please talk to me about your experiences with the record in the comments down below. Please do drop me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Please do consider subscribing to the channel as well. We are so close to 1,500 subs, I can almost taste it. But until next time, guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.